VUzi is a ship like no other. Unlike other ships in Murder Drones, if this ship was to occur, it would have changed the entire story of Murder Drones, not for the good and not even for the bad, but in a way that we wouldn't recognize the final product. Hello everyone, welcome back to Panzer vs. Your host Panzer speaking, and on today's video we are going to be discussing VUzi, the ship between V and Uzi. Now I gotta make this clear before I talk about this. This ship, I do have thoughts on it, and I'll explain them towards the end. It's very hard for me to get evidence for this. For some of these ships that we're going to be covering, the evidence is super small, and for this one I really have 3-ish episodes to work with, one that's like a smoky gun type evidence. So I had to use Intermission for some evidence for this ship. I know it's a fan-made thing, it's not canon. For me, I consider it semi-canon, where we can use it, but it's not going to help the case of the ship that much. So I just want to make that clear. This ship has very little evidence, so I'm going to use whatever I can get on it. But let's actually talk about the ship itself. Uzi and V had always had a rocky relationship in Murder Drones, especially in the beginning, with V wanting to kill every single worker drone. And we also see kind of Uzi have the same feeling towards V, which is general mistrust. If it isn't for Ed, Uzi would have probably killed V in the beginning. But because of N, V doesn't get killed. And this ship and its evidence does not start until episode 4. And we can clearly tell they both hate each other. Or they don't really hate each other, they just don't want to work with each other that well. Especially in episode 4, when Uzi and V are fighting, and especially during the prom episode, I don't think that made Uzi trust V even more. It made her trust her even less now. Let's actually now go into episode 4. In episode 4, I remember I talked about this during my V's redemption arc video. V basically put herself under the bus and blamed herself for the killing of the other students instead of Uzi, when she could have probably said Uzi was it, because she knew the consequences for Uzi was far bigger than the consequences for her. And that is the first piece of evidence that we can get that works towards this ship. Because maybe it's a V, not just out of the goodness of her heart, but because she likes Uzi. Remember, I'm stretching the definition as much as I can. Some of this evidence I have to stretch until the end where we get the smoking gun evidence. That ends up episode 4. Murder Drones Intermission. In Murder Drones Intermission, we see a scene, and this is when V's about to try and kill Uzi. And V stops herself, because in Uzi, she sees her original self. The shy, quiet girl. And you can kind of see that as V sees Uzi is kind of like her. The old version of her. And V decides to spare her. That's the evidence we get at Intermission. I know it's not that much evidence, and unfortunately, like I said, this ship doesn't have that much evidence working for its favor. Episode 6, we all know about the sacrifice. I talked about it in my Envy video. How the sacrifice could be because she loved N, but also maybe she also loved Uzi at the time. I will make a video on Newbie eventually. But let's continue on. That's what we see in episode 6 with the sacrifice scene. Now let's go to episode 8. This has the smoking gun evidence that we need. During the final battle, Uzi says to Sin, "Don't harm that attractive robot." She said the same thing early on about Fad. That is the only smoking gun evidence that we have that can support the theory of both of them being in a ship. Like I said, there is very little evidence for the entirety of the ship, but I will generally give my thoughts on it. Personally, I think VUzi is a unique ship, because outside the box, if a ship that on paper doesn't sound that good, but in reality, it makes a lot of sense. Because both of their opposites kind of work together. And I genuinely think that if this was to occur, it would have probably been pretty good. and pretty well received by a decent portion of the fandom. Would probably well received it. Does it beat VUzi or Envy? Probably not. If I had to genuinely rate this ship, I'm going to say it's a great idea. It has small bits of evidence that work in its favor, but it doesn't have enough evidence where it goes up the pedestal like Envy or VUzi goes. So that's basically my counter argument. We know, and I had to use Intermission as evidence because I can't find any other evidence. If there's other evidence, please write it down in the comments below. I greatly appreciate if I'm wrong about something, just say it. Like, I want to know if I'm wrong or anything. But like I said, we had to unfortunately use Intermission, so that docks it down points. So general thoughts is this: great ship, very little evidence, so it doesn't go as high on the pedestal. Now, a message before we do our outro. I'm sorry for the poor quality of the previous video. That is something that I'm currently trying to work on, especially my mic quality. So hopefully that gets fixed in the future. I'm probably going to get a new mic in the future. And my upload schedule is probably going to switch from every 2 days to every 3 days, just to give me an extra day to focus on editing and making the best possible video. Because my goal is I'm trying to improve with every single video. Now I'm going to tell you some good news. I have a collab in the works. So that's going to be very fun to see. And hopefully that should come out within like 2 to 3 weeks. That one I'm going to be patient on. That one, the video needs a marinade and everything. So let's go to our outro. You all know En's going to give us an outro. Remember, do it for him to get a girlfriend. I will be making a video on how I'm not able to find VUzi plushie in my entire region. Very interesting story. See you all later. And go take over. Well, you all heard from the man himself. He wants a damn girlfriend, so you better subscribe to help get him a girlfriend. Well, I hope to see you all later. And hope to see you all back on Pandaverse soon.